Good morning, everyone. It is with great pleasure that I would like to introduce Eva Kaili, the Vice President of the European Parliament, who is joining us live from Brussels. Her remarks will be followed by a discussion moderated by Michael Kratsios, Managing Director at Scale AI and the 4th Chief Technology Officer of the United States. Welcome, Vice President.
Thank you for having me. Congratulations for such an excellent event. And I really tried to make it there, but I'm very happy that I managed even virtually.
Vice President, if you wanted to provide some brief remarks, and then Michael Kratsios will moderate the discussion.
Yes, thank you. So let me also thank Eric Schmidt and Mr. Eva Kaili for the invitation, and also for allowing me to discuss with a good friend, Michael Kratsios, who's been successful in politics and also in new technologies. I am currently working on several files that basically we try to be on the same page. We try to make sure we can be aligned between the European Union and our transatlantic alliance, but also to approach, let's say, more allies that we have in this world, the democratic alliance that we should build on, like Japan, Canada, Australia. And this is an effort that in order to be achieved, we need to make sure that we will have a European approach for emerging technologies. And this is what we're working on these last years. It's extremely important during the 6 months now that we also are basically at war at our borders to realize our shortcomings and to try to achieve resilience and autonomy, as our interdependencies seem to be now overwhelming and adding an increase to the energy prices post-COVID, to inflation, and also interruptions of supply chains. Not just the technologies that we are already dealing with special, of course, highlight of the AI, but also under the light of biotech and big data and quantum technologies. Societies and economies are in need of a legal certainty in order to use the benefits of such technologies for our citizens in a safe environment. Even nuclear fusion, we are working a lot now into achieving energy storage, better energy alternatives. I think it would be very interesting, because I understand that the perspective for EU is usually that we overdo regulation here. I would say we are trying to achieve smart regulation. We talk about AI as a technology that it's not really a commercial product. It's basically dynamically evolving systems with life cycles that they are completely different and more complex than any other technology we've dealt with. And where we're standing from, EU is struggling with different languages, different tax and legal systems. So we are trying to achieve a real single market to be able to also accelerate this market power that Europe is, and adding to that to be able to collaborate collectively with our democratic allies. There is this study, which is the cost of non-EU. It was updated after the pandemic, and it seems that without the European Union, we would talk about the GDP almost 20% lower. It would shrink, and we talk about collaboration at this point, not just economically, but also in peace, common values, democratic governance, international development, with the TTC, for example, with US, on human rights, on social health protection, and of course, research, innovation, now also energy and defense. I think it's really known, and it's been discussed on several different platforms of dialogue that we have. The new regulations we are bringing as hopefully global blueprints that they can change, but I think it's the first time that we are succeeding into having rules for the internet, the DSA, the DMA, the Data Governance Act, now the Artificial Intelligence Act, and with more, of course, on the energy side of technologies. This effort is coming to make sure that not just we have a harmonized approach and not 27 different ones, but also that it will remove final frictions of the digital market, and it will allow us to have a better, let's say, a more political strategy on the emerging technologies, better strategic considerations and priorities, and of course, to be able to bring together with the support of funding, academia, the industry, and the government, with a special focus on deep tech and taking the burden of the private sector and the risk of the private sector to achieve that we can intervene in sectors where it's necessary, under the light again of the recent multiple crises, for us to be stronger. One example that I believe in the US is also now at the top of the agenda is our investment in the chips sector, the semiconductor sector, where we realize that EU has, let's say, 10% of the global market, US another 10%, and we have committed 43 billion of leveraging 1/4 of that by European funding to achieve 20% of the global production of semiconductors. The same, I know, is happening with the US. It could be achieved if we invest in cutting-edge technologies and if we collaborate and not overlap or duplicate with our partners. So this is just an example on our point of view, on our perspective at this point, and of course we are moving very fast into investing more in the energy generation of alternative sources, and also storage. So I think we can have a very interesting discussion with Michael Kratsios, because I think the differences we have, if we join forces, is exactly what will make us stronger and would create a huge market superpower, but also a democratic superpower, super alliance. And I'm ready to discuss with him. I don't want to take more of your time.
No, thank you so much. It's terrific to catch up with you again, and I know we've worked together for many years, so it's excited to have this conversation. I think, you know, one thing that I think is important to kind of double click on is the efforts underway in Europe around artificial intelligence. So over the last, you know, maybe 4 or 5 years, both the EU and the United States have been taking efforts to better understand and better appreciate how AI should be regulated. And in the US context, there's been some effort around using a sort of sector-specific approach to drive a lot of the regulatory framework going forward. The EU has taken a slightly different approach, where they see it more from a single act, an AI act that will essentially sort of be the guidepost for a wide variety of industries. And kind of when that draft regulation kind of came out in Europe, there was a bit of a mixed response about how do you sort of balance innovation and kind of, you know, reconcile it with some of this, some of these regulations. So I'd love to hear your thoughts a little bit on the strategy around the AI Act, and kind of when and where do you see that becoming finalized?
Well, let me first describe a bit this approach that you mentioned. So the approach that we had, and we are still working on it, is a risk-based approach, also per sector. This means that we have this pyramid of high risk or even applications that have unacceptable risks and should be banned. In Europe, for example, subliminal manipulation or real-time biometric identification and surveillance, even social scoring by public authorities. These are things that we don't just see at the Black Mirror series. It's the Black Mirror of AI, but we've seen that this technology is there, and non-democratic countries have been using to control citizens. So this is unacceptable as risk. Then for the high-risk applications, especially in health, transportation, in training and education, we want to have human oversight and we also need to have ex-ante requirements for data training and validation and testing, and also to make sure that there will be a better risk management and transparency. So, of course, the majority of the applications, they are of low risk or limited minimal risk. This means that the AI Act will have binding obligations, but also voluntary standards. And I think and I hope that it's going to be balanced in the end in order to not stifle innovation, because we understand that we need to be globally competitive. But again, our principles and US principles, they are different than the mentality and the culture is allowing China to use new technologies for control of, let's say, citizens in a more centralized manner. So this is what we're trying to achieve. We are a few steps before the conclusion of this act, but it's just a piece of the puzzle of legislation for the digital economy. And of course, again, this is an evolving procedure. So if something needs to be adopted to the extent that the technology is also developing, then we will do that.
Absolutely. I think what the next question I want to ask kind of revolves around some of the things you discussed about the necessity of reinforcing and building the transatlantic alliance. And sometimes here in the U.S. we see, oftentimes there's some in Europe that, at least in the technology space, that sort of view the United States as a competitor rather than a partner sometimes on tech and trade. So whether it's building domestic sort of cloud capabilities or other examples in certain European countries. So given that, how do you sort of view this in the light of, as you mentioned, this sort of geopolitical competition with China and the necessity of us trying to find a way to work together?
Well, I think we cannot afford to compete in sectors that we can have shared interest and we can achieve more and better together. It's been estimated that AI could contribute up to 15 trillion to the global economy by 2030. And it seems that the economic gains of China would be basically a 25% boost to its GDP. So I think that actually, in terms of sharing common interests and values in freedom, in protecting democracy, but also in a rules-based order society, is only to our benefit to find ways to collaborate. I do believe that collectively we can achieve more. We can also make sure that we can keep talent, because there is lack of talent in emerging technologies. And I also feel that we can achieve interoperability between our systems and also common data standards. Even if we have different approaches, we can work together and align. In my opinion and understanding, for people it's extremely important to be able to remain safe in such an unstable environment. And to achieve that, we need to update together very fast also our cybersecurity and allow to have like a trusted environment for us to work together. So I feel we have more room to collaborate and a bit less to compete. Competition in good faith and in a good manner is always welcome.
Absolutely, and kind of in closing, to kind of end, I would think on sort of a more a positive note, what inspires you that really our transatlantic alliance has the right vision for technology compared to some of our adversaries, if you will?
Well, I think again that it's not just the US and EU. It's not that by joining forces we can achieve more. I will take again the example of the Chips and Science Act that you have to increase manufacturing, production and capacity, and also to achieve better security, not just for supply chains, but also in our defense sector, to safeguard our communications from spyware technologies, to be able to safeguard also the energy grids from any hybrid attacks, and of course, again, to strengthen our market and industry, but the approach that EU has, it's a bit different, is that we need to invest, and we do invest more into R&D. Maybe US allows more freedoms to the market. We do support the R&D, and I think if we join forces there, we can achieve more in the deep tech also, and we can, let's say, commit to specific purchases in the market so that we can drive also private investments in the direction that it would be strategically important for the future. Again, because if you see the underlying tech war that could be taking place during this crisis, everything directs us into working together and strengthening the transatlantic collaboration. TTC is extremely important. It has several sectors of collaboration on data, artificial intelligence, from not just automation, but to autonomous systems and with technologies that we can, of course, if we want them to be interoperable, we need to collaborate. But we can enrich it besides the data standards exchange into also the energy sector. So I think we have a great platform of collaboration, and together we can be much stronger. And I hope also next time we will be able to have a physical meeting and discussion as things are developing quite fast.
Absolutely. We would love that. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.